You used a hero's pain for a punchline, John. President Trump's voice was low, but it carried across the stunned silence of the Oval Office. Today, we are going to show you what happens when that hero fights back. The day began like any other in the Trump White House. A controlled storm of briefings, phone calls, and policy debates. But the calm shattered the moment Vice President J.D. Vance walked into the Oval Office, his jaw tight, holding a tablet. Mr. President, you need to see this, Vance said, his voice grim. On the screen was John Oliver, his face contorted in a familiar smirk, standing before a cheering studio audience. The set was dark, but a massive screen behind him glowed with the logo of the White House's newest initiative, Project Homefront, a program designed to provide rapid, no questions asked housing for America's homeless veterans. Project Homefront! Oliver boomed, his voice dripping with condescending pity. It sounds so noble, doesn't it? Like something a bald eagle would dream up if it had too much to drink. But in reality, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. A PR stunt designed to make you feel good while doing nothing. The screen cut to a shaky, rain-soaked interview with a man in a faded army jacket. His name was Sergeant Marcus Thorne, a decorated veteran who had served 2 tours. His face was etched with exhaustion and despair. The program's a joke, Thorne mumbled to Oliver's off-screen producer. I've filled out every form, made every call. They lose you. They forget you. I'm still on the street. My little girl. She's staying with her aunt. She asks me every day when we can have a home again. The camera zoomed in on a tear rolling down Thorne's cheek. The studio audience groaned in sympathy. Oliver returned to the screen, his expression one of mock solemnity. A PR stunt, he repeated, shaking his head. And the human cost is a man like that, a hero our country has thrown away. President Trump watched, his knuckles white as he gripped the resolute desk. The air in the room grew cold. This wasn't a political attack. It was an attack on his promise, on the very soul of his commitment to the nation's warriors. Get me the head of Veterans Affairs, now, Trump commanded. His voice was quiet, but it held the authority of a thunderclap. And find me Sergeant Marcus Thorne. I don't care what it takes. Find him. The machine of the White House roared to life, while the media was gleefully replaying Oliver's segment. Trump's team was on a mission. Within 2 hours, they had located Sergeant Thorne in a homeless shelter in a deep blue city run by a notoriously anti-administration mayor. The first report back was infuriating. Thorne's application wasn't just lost, it was buried. A city official, a man with a long history of publicly denouncing the president, had flagged the application with a note. Deprioritize, WH initiative, wait for state funding. He had intentionally sabotaged a veteran's chance at a home to score a political point. The second report was the one that broke the dam. It came from a junior aide who had spoken to Thorne's sister-in-law, the woman caring for his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The aide's voice cracked as she relayed the story. Lily had been drawing pictures, not of princesses or ponies, but of a little house with a big American flag out front. Underneath each drawing, she wrote the same 3 words, "For my daddy." President Trump listened to the report in the Situation Room, surrounded by his top advisors. When the aide finished, he was silent for a long moment. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Then he looked up, his eyes blazing with a cold, righteous fire. "Get a plane," he said. "We are bringing Sergeant Thorne and his daughter to Washington today." He then turned to his press secretary and set up a live stream from the Oval Office. "I want the whole world to see this." The news of the impromptu live stream sent shockwaves through the media. On his own set, preparing for a victory lap, John Oliver felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. This was not how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to control the narrative. He was the one who exposed, who mocked, who won. As the live stream began, the screen showed a split view. On one side, the regal, imposing setting of the Oval Office. On the other, a live feed from John Oliver's studio, where he was now forced to watch, his smug expression replaced by a nervous, twitching frown. President Trump was seated behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. To his right sat Sergeant Marcus Thorne, his uniform now clean and pressed, his posture straight, his eyes filled with a dawning, disbelieving hope. And on his lap sat his daughter, Lily, clutching a small, stuffed bear. The audience watching online and in Oliver's own studio gasped collectively. This wasn't a press conference. This was something else entirely. A few hours ago, Trump began, his voice calm and measured. A television host in New York used this man, Sergeant Marcus Thorne, a decorated American hero, to get a laugh. He paused, letting the words sink in. In Oliver's studio, the audience, which had been cheering for him moments ago, was now dead silent, their eyes glued to the screen. He called our program to house homeless veterans a stunt, Trump continued. He showed you this man's pain and told you it was because of our failure. This was the first blow of the emotional avalanche. Trump gestured to a large monitor behind him. An internal city government email appeared on the screen, the one from the hostile official. The words deprioritize, WH initiative were highlighted in red. The truth, Trump said, his voice rising with controlled anger, is that Sergeant Thorne's application was deliberately sabotaged, not by us, but by a local politician who hates what we stand for more than he loves our veterans. He left a soldier on the streets to make a political statement. A wave of murmurs swept through Oliver's studio. People were shaking their heads, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. Oliver himself looked pale, his eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. Then came the second, more devastating blow. But the bureaucracy is one thing, Trump said, his voice softening as he turned to Lily. The human cost is another. He looked at the little girl. Lily, I heard you've been drawing some pictures. Would you show them to me? Timidly, Lily held up a small stack of crayon drawings. The camera zoomed in. One after another, they showed the same image. A small, simple house with a big American flag. And on each one, the same heartbreaking inscription, "For my daddy." A woman in Oliver's studio audience let out an audible sob. Then another. Soon, the camera panned across a sea of tear-streaked faces. They weren't looking at their host anymore. They were looking at the little girl on the screen, at the human receipt of a political war she never asked to be a part of. The audience had become a weapon, their raw emotion a verdict against the man on the stage. John Oliver could only watch, his face ashen. His carefully constructed narrative of sarcasm and data points had been obliterated by a child's crayon drawings. Finally, President Trump delivered the final, crushing blow. He reached into his desk and pulled out not a document, not a binder, but a single, shiny brass key attached to a simple leather fob. He leaned forward, looking directly at Sergeant Thorne. Sergeant, on behalf of a grateful nation, I want to apologize. Not for our program, but for the fact that any American, let alone a hero like you, would be used as a pawn in a political game. He then placed the key in the veteran's hand. This is the key to a new, fully furnished home just a few miles from here. Trump said, his voice thick with emotion. It's yours. No more paperwork. No more waiting. Your country is finally keeping its promise. Sergeant Thorne stared at the key, his tough exterior finally breaking. Tears streamed down his face as he pulled his daughter into a tight embrace. The image of the father and daughter, reunited and given hope in the heart of American power, was overwhelming. The online chat exploded. In Oliver's studio, the silence was broken by a sudden, thunderous wave of applause. But it wasn't for him. It was for the man on the screen. President Trump let the moment hang in the air, a masterpiece of political theater grounded in genuine action. Then, he turned his gaze directly to the camera, to the feed showing a defeated and humiliated John Oliver. The talking heads on TV use our heroes for ratings, he said, his voice ringing with absolute authority. We use our power to give them a home. He stood up and walked over to the veteran, placing a hand on his shoulder. Welcome home, soldier. Your commander-in-chief will never forget you. The live stream ended. The screen went black, but the impact was permanent. John Oliver sat frozen on his stage, bathed in the glow of his own failure. The sound of his own audience's applause for his adversary ringing in his ears. He had been so focused on the punchline that he never saw the knockout punch coming. Now that you've seen how a leader can turn an attack into a triumph, we want to hear from you. What part of this story, the email, the drawings, or the final key, was the most powerful moment for you? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of true leadership in action.